Hello everyone, it's consolidation time, and this is the second one. It's to do with Parliament. Okay, so what do we need to know? Well, first of all, this is from the specification. You can see the key terms and terminology that we need to be aware of, but also the focus, which is essentially around the functions that Parliament perform. Okay, so that's going to be the structure we're going to work around and make sure we've covered everything. So as we said with the other time, there's different methods you can use. I know some of you are using flashcards, others using the revision table. I would suggest picking what you think is appropriate. Leave the practice of the 9-mark questions probably do a little bit later on. So here's the table. These are the words that I think are probably relevant. Some of them are actually not in the specification, but they just are important. And you need to know the definition and examples. 3 parts to this. First one, representation. You can see what it's about in terms of how the House of Commons and the House of Lords represent people or don't represent people, and the different theories behind this. So if we were to go here, this is a slide from way back when we did this, probably around October time. And it just outlines a little bit about the different theories regarding representation you may be wishing to use. Okay, so that leads into the question about how an MP represents the public, either representing the constituents, their party, or their own conscience. Then we have the area of scrutiny and the importance of these particular terms, how the executive is scrutinised in both the Commons and the Lords, the role of the opposition, now with Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition, but also those 3 areas of debate, questions and select committees, and being aware of those and how they've changed. And finally down here is to do with the legislative process, how laws are made, both in the Commons and the Lords, the role of the Public Bills Committee in the investigation, and also the role of the whips, which is important. Okay. Linked to that are the reforms, and this is to show that you have an up-to-date understanding of how Parliament has changed over time. So you need to know what's been the impact of the different reforms in these different areas. Select committees, how they've changed over time, the alterations to Prime Minister's questions, including more recent ones during the crisis over COVID and how they're now doing it through Zoom. Public Bills Committees and urgent questions, how they've changed. The composition of the House of Lords we've been talking about in the Constitution. Dissolution of Parliament and the use of e-petition debates. Now, to help you with this, you need to dig into your file. No doubt it'll be well organised, and as a result of which you'll find quite easily this particular article, which talks about the rejuvenated institution, which is the House of Commons, in different ways as you go through and when it has been reformed, select committees, urgent questions, etc. So that's really, really helpful and should be useful in completing that table. Now we move on to the 25-mark questions, of which there are 4, and as you can see down here, they're very much linked to the different functions. First of all, the scrutiny function, then the legislative function, then the way MPs represent, and finally a more specialist question which is done related to committees. The reason I do that is because if you look up here in terms of the specification, it talks a lot about the work of committees, it talks a lot about how they've developed and the role of the whips. So it's important we cover all those 4 areas. How do we do that? Well, we talked about potentially doing flashcards. We talked also about practicing paragraphs. I would argue that the best method what we've come up with is using the preparation table. So I'm going to take you through those preparation tables, and that will be your exercise that you've got to complete. So, first one, here's the question. Parliament has increased its power to scrutinise the executive. Well, clearly, if we look over here, you can see the arguments who say, yes, it has. The role of the Speaker, increasing the powers by which backbenchers can come and ask questions, urgent questions of the Prime Minister, has been significant. The increasing role of the select committees and their profile, and also the role of the backbench business committee, as well, being important in shaping and encouraging the role of MPs. You balance that against these 3 counterpoints. The process of questioning the executive and its limitations, the difficulties the select committees have in having an impact, and the fact the executive continues to dominate in how the business of the House is run. So there you have the argument. You'll have this waggle to help you with it, okay? And your job is obviously to complete the table with the explanation and examples linked to these points. To help you with that, I would say dig into your file again and see if you can find this article, the one with Russell Brand on it. Within that pack, you'll find various articles about the role of Parliament. This one is good in terms about how the departmental select committees have changed over time. Okay. Second one, limited control of the legislative process. So what we're saying here is Parliament can do very little, especially when it's being driven by the government's manifesto with a majority. Secondly, they have the means by which they can control the passage of legislation. You're talking about guillotines here, you're talking about the controlled use of the whips, and then the fact that individual MPs have very limited opportunities because you're talking about private members' bills. The counter to private members' bills is that they still provide an opportunity. You need examples of where they've been successful. But on the counterpoints here, you're really talking about whether or not recent governments have been able to push through their manifesto promises and the fact that MPs in the Lords have been more rebellious. You need examples here. That's the crucial thing. The waggle I'm providing you with doesn't specifically direct to every aspect of this, so you're going to have to work quite hard in this particular grid. Okay, to help you with it, we also use this slide when we are learning it, which gives you a flow diagram of how the different stages occur and why you would say perhaps the Public Bills Committee is only one part of a process of legislation. Third essay. Here's the grid. MPs are purely lobby fodder. So we're arguing here that essentially MPs lack real control over their destiny and they're really controlled by their political party and what they do. Points in favour of that. Well, the party manifesto locks them in to actually supporting their own party. Secondly, there's the role of the whips and how they impose party discipline. And thirdly, limited opportunities that MPs really have to work beyond what their party wants them to do. The counterpoint to this is obviously that the MPs have become more rebellious. So you need some statistics on this. MPs are aware of the constituency concerns. For example, we just had this situation with Dominic Cummings. You could argue about how certain MPs have felt the need to show their displeasure of that based on concerns raised by the constituents. And finally, the fact that there have been reforms which have allowed the MPs to influence the work of Parliament much more. Again, that's where your backbench business committee comes in. Okay, so what we're saying here, yes, they are, no, they aren't. And this waggle should help you in determining exactly what the arguments are. Last one, and this is more specialist because we're talking about the work that Parliament has done in committees. So the arguments in favour, yes, it does. Most executive actions are challenged within select committees. So you need examples here of how that's been the case. That article with Russell Brand will be useful for that. The role of the Public Bills Committee and how significant it is in the legislative process will be the second point. And then finally, you can talk about the Backbench Business Committee here, but also the Liaison Committee, which was in action last week, talking to the Prime Minister, challenging him on his actions. So you can see there's a range of different committees, which mean they have a clear focus within Parliament. The other side of that is there's other methods by which work is done in Parliament, such as questions and debate in the first paragraph. Then you talk about the fact that the committee process is only one part of the legislative process. And finally, the reality that actually the work that the MPs do isn't just in committee, but exists all the way around Parliament and including in their constituency areas. This waggle is to be deconstructed to allow you to do that for the committees. Righty-ho. Why are we doing this? Well, to remind us that in fact what we're trying to do is draw all the elements together. You'll notice there is a set amount of stuff that you have to just understand and you have to learn. On the basis of that, you can pretty much adapt it to most questions. So make sure you work hard on the functions of Parliament to put those grids together. Thank you very much.